Howdy folks, in today's English video lesson, we're going to learn more vocabulary with the legendary Christopher Hitchens, exploring two fascinating topics in my opinion. One is the 10 Commandments and thought control.
Choose me. And then they're all addressed to people who don't know about anything except agriculture. I mean, all the commandments are effectively to do with animals and agricultural subsistence.
Agricultural subsistence, which is our first word of the lesson. This is a means of supporting oneself, making sure that you don't perish, that you don't die. Agricultural subsistence, supporting yourself through agricultural activities.
Except for commandments that every society has.
Right.
Such as prohibitions against
murder, lying.
Murder, theft, and perjury are the ones that are, I would say, unimpeachable.
These are the ones that Christopher believes to be unimpeachable. When something is unimpeachable, you cannot doubt it. You can't criticize it. You cannot question it. Prohibition against perjury. Perjury is an offense. It's the offense of willfully, deliberately lying or misrepresenting a situation. For instance, in a court of law, a witness might perjure themselves. Also pay attention to that pattern, to perjure oneself. That is the verb. Perjury, the noun.
And then I don't want to give away too much about what I'm speaking of later, but I'll just say this much. I mean, the 10th commandment, which is the one I'm writing independently another book about, forbidding thought, defining thought crime, as Orwell would put it.
As Orwell would put it, referring to George Orwell. I hope you've had a chance to read Orwell's masterpiece, 1984, which is about tyranny and thought control. Let's check it out if you haven't.
Big Brother does put it for the first time. You're not allowed to think about your neighbor's property.
Right.
You're not allowed to covet.
You're not allowed to even covet, to desire what your neighbor has.
You're not allowed to have the ambition to be as well off as, or have the... You mustn't take your neighbor's property. You mustn't try and annex it to yourself.
It's not that you mustn't try to annex it to yourself. Annex or annex, you can pronounce it either way, is to add something to your territory, to your property. So it's not that you are not allowed to steal it or add it. But
steal it. You mustn't even think about it. The beginning of thought crime, which is the beginning of the totalitarian idea that you're guilty for thinking things, which you may only have been half aware of doing. You may have been half asleep. But you're still condemned. This is very, very dangerous stuff.
I mean, you're obviously well established and renowned as a contrarian thinker, but is this really this black and white for you? I mean, are there no nuances? Or you resolutely believe that there's no use for these commandments?
Okay, so a good adverb to learn here is resolutely, which means steadfastly, strongly, without wavering, So here we're talking about a belief that you take to be true, and you are positive. You are not even calling it into question.
Well, no, to the contrary. I'm sorry. I mean, in the Analects of Confucius, for example, long before monotheism, it says...
Analects of Confucius. Analects are the sayings of in this case, the Chinese philosopher Confucius. So he says, to the contrary. So what you're saying is actually not true. And he's elaborating on that viewpoint.
Don't do to another person what you would find repulsive if done to yourself. It's actually a rather weaker rule than most people realize, but it is what we call the golden rule. It's been around as long as human society's been around.
Don't do unto thy neighbor.
We couldn't have evolved far enough to be having this discussion with this technology if people were any different. I mean, if we didn't have an instinct for solidarity.
If we didn't have an instinct for solidarity, for supporting one another, then we wouldn't be sitting here. So he believes that these rules are necessary, and I suppose without them, these conversations, wouldn't take place. So we normally use the word solidarity in this pattern. I stand in solidarity, When a group of people has faced a tragedy and you want to support them, you may hear others say this to support that affected group of individuals.
For common interest and for care for one another, life would be impossible. The idea that we wouldn't know this without a supernatural authority, however, is a groveling, slavish idea, as if we need permission.
Okay, so a couple good words: groveling, slavish. All right, grovel literally means to crawl on the ground. So when you grovel, figuratively, you go to someone and ask them to forgive you, or to give you approval, or to give you permission. So he says that we can live with these rules, or useful rules, without being groveling to a supernatural idea, without believing anything otherworldly.
To know what is innate to us. Religion actually takes its morality from us, not the other way around.
So, right.
Whereas
God didn't create humans, humans created God.
Let me put it like this. I mean, if I put this question to various people quite senior religious people in public in debates several times, and they haven't come up with an answer yet. You have to tell me of a moral statement that could be made by a believer, or a moral action undertaken by a believer, that I couldn't make or undertake because I'm not a believer. Something that would be impossible for me.
All right, that's a great challenge. If you want to take it on, by all means, never too late. Catch you in the next